Have you ever just saw someone who was perfect in every way and deserves your love, affection, and wholehearted loyalty and just decided, man, I really hate that guy? Yeah, me neither, but these are the most interesting idiots who said let's side with the giant tentacle monsters that literally ruin everything. Chaos is a pretty unique faction with plenty of lore surrounding the gods and the traitor space marines. However, despite the Traitor Guard being in almost every major conflict, there isn't a lot of lore or love out there for them. They have relatively few moments compared to their loyalist brethren, but they are still putting in that work for their god's favor. And you should put in the work by gently caressing that like button for your god, me. If you want to see some of the most interesting loyalist guards, check out these two videos that I've previously done. As always, these aren't in any particular order, and if there are some regiments that you would like to see, lore dump some info in the comments below. The Mobian 6. Starting our list off as probably the most recognizable Chaos Guardsmen out there due to their starring in the recently released Warhammer 40k Darktide. The 6 are the guardsmen that just turned into a rotten egg. Figuratively and literally, as they decide to work for the most benevolent and fratulent god, Nurgle. Grandfather Nurgle has blessed these boys good, as most of them can be seen wearing his favor and getting blessed with his, air quotes, gifts. The Mobian 6 were the ones in charge of defending the Mobian domain, and the ruling world of the sector, Atoma Prime. It's here in the Hive City that we see these originally good eggs go bad, as the dark tide that borders this sector has started to creep in through small cracks. Chaos cultists called the Admonition released a huge plague in the lower levels of Hive Tertium, the plague easily sweeping through the men and women who resided there and turning them into the undead poxwalkers that we see patrolling in hordes. The Mobian 6 were charged with clearing the lower levels before the rot could spread faster in the Hive City, but unfortunately the foul god Nurgle turned his eyes onto the planet. Chaos reigned supreme and chanted in the Grandfather's glory louder and louder. Eventually, even the guardsmen who came to help were eventually corrupted and began to receive the Grandfather's love, usually in the form of blisters, super aids, and probably a lot of ingrown hairs. The entire regiment that was once stalwart defenders were now completely dedicated to aiding the ruinous powers. First, they would eradicate the Emperor's Light by desecrating holy machines and shrines with their foul presence, and then they quickly eliminated their loyal comrades, who they had shed blood with. In many of the levels you can find Ogrins and other guardsmen killed by what seems like betrayal. After getting rid of the loyalists in their regiments, Nurgle began to bless them with more gifts. Mutants, pox-inflected famers, and Poxhound joined and filled in the ranks of the 6. As they rampaged in the lower levels of the Hive City, sickening flesh tendrils and disgusting effigies began to sprout, further strengthening Nurgle. Soon enough, the small uprising became a full-on heresy, as Beast of Nurgle and Daemon Host aided the Traitor Guard. Before the Inquisition could arrive to assist the Hive World, the Traitor Guards made a massive terrorist plan that would make ISIS probably a little wet. Hijacking one of the trains that ascended to the higher levels, the Mobian 6 filled the train with small detonation charges filled with plague. Attaching some unwilling poxbursters, they send the train to the higher levels of the Hive City of Tertium. The tram arrives with no issues and explodes in the station, absolutely spreading the plague and word of Nurgle fully into the city. Those unlucky enough to escape are covered in decay as the others become undead filled with maggots in their body. That's when we arrive. The Inquisition raid do some chemical cleansing in the name of the Emperor. Besides the standard Traitor Guard, the deadliest of the units that the Mobian 6 employ is their snipers. Using hotshot lasguns, these pieces of shit sometimes show up in twos and are always straight up deadeyes, never missing a shot and annihilating any of the Inquisition forces that arrive. Also, they employ grenadiers that just yeet some firebombs and go doot 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 away. We get to see the full roster when it comes to these guys, and it's hella fun seeing them in actual action as we fight them. Without a doubt, this is the most love the Traitor's Guard get when it comes to 40k lore. The Volcani Cataphracts. Back to Cadia. The fall of Cadia was one of the biggest events to happen in recent lore, second probably to that of the Circatrix Maledictum or Great Rift. The Cadians knew something was up. Their proverbial spider senses were tingling before the initial attack on Cadia had begun. So the bigwigs over in Cadian High Command rallied nearby regiments in order to strengthen the foothold at the Eye of Terra. As the forces began to pour into the Tyrock Field's landing zones, many of the excited Cadians were especially hyped to see an Imperial Guardsman regiment called the Volcani Cataphracts. These guys were legendary throughout the sector, and really think about that. The Cadians really only have disciplined, highly loyal guardsmen to show for their planetary export. So to impress these guys go a long way. Well, the Volcani Cataphracts were just as excited to see the Cadians. Except instead of saying glory to the Emperor of Mankind, they were saying some pretty heretical shit like blood for the Blood God.
Blood for the Blood God! Blood for the Blood God! Blood for the Blood God!
That's right, the Volcani Cataphracts had turned traitor, and while they weren't worshipping Nurgle, thank God, they were worshipping the Skull Taker himself, Khorne. You see, somehow, during a Chaos Crusade called the Chlorocost, these rugged veterans of the Imperium went traitor, and oh gee whiz did they go hard, becoming fanatics of Khorne and reveling in the bloodshed of close quarters combat. The Volcani Cataphracts charged out of their spaceships, completely surprising the Loyalist Guardsmen, and totally annihilating the Cadian Interior Guard and High Command. This dealt a huge blow to the initial hours of Abaddon's 13th Black Crusade. But in times of hardship, real fucking gangsters show up. The then General Usurker E. Creed decimated the surprise assault, and this would eventually lead to him becoming the Lord Castellan of Cadia. But more on that in a later video. Let's get back to the Cataphracts. This unit dons heavier flak armor than the normal Imperial Guard regiments, and like most Khornite followers, they have a power boner for anything that has chains and revs. While they still use ranged weaponry, heavy support vehicles, and just in general what you would expect of a guardsman, they are without a doubt the biggest tryhards. They go down to the last man standing no matter what, and are always willing to throw hands with any enemy. They still classify as a support unit and usually are supporting Chaos Space Marines, or they are given specific instructions and points to take. You'll see them with various Space Marine chapters such as the Night Lords, Iron Warriors, and the Black Legion. These guardsmen, while traitors, still hold their own and were able to take multiple cities in brute force operations. Overall, their assault on Cadia is what secured them on this list. After the fall of Cadia, they haven't been seen too often, but they are still out there probably tagging along with Abaddon as he fucks around in the new lore. The Prospero Spire Guard. Good old Magnus, somehow inserting himself in every single one of my videos. The Prospero Spire Guard are the Imperial Guardsman regiment that of course hails from the Thousand Suns homeworld Prospero, or what's left of it. These guys actually have quite a bit of personality, especially in their appearance. Wearing something I would compare to Craftworld Eldari clothing, long red cloaks with fanciful silver hats adorn their bodies as they seek to aid the Thousand Suns in their conquest. Pre-heresy they were seen a lot, usually mentioned in passing, or a select few of them such as Salkam Vitara, a captain of the 15th Assault Infantry that can be seen accompanying Magnus and his sons during key moments. Now you might be wondering why they're even on this list. Well, to be honest, they really just threw their hats in with Magnus because, you know, the Space Wolves were tricked into killing the Thousand Suns Legion and burning the planet. So like, yeah, it's pretty relatable that they would shed their loyalties to the Imperium when the Imperium is actively seeking to fuck their shit up. Plus I just like how they look compared to some of the other traitor guards we usually see. They use the standard Imperial Guard weaponry and units that we normally see, except they also employ riot shields in their battles, acting as bulwarks while the rest of the regiment lays down some supporting fire. Most of them died during the burning of Prospero, but a few of them are still kicking by the time Magnus the Red launches a retaliation crusade on Defenris. I like how these guys were like, oh, you're gonna burn, shatter our planet? Alright, bet. They failed to destroy Fenris, but I do like their enthusiasm. And honestly, that's it. I guess I could mention the traitors of the Harakoni Warhawks, which were seen in Dawn of War 2, but I've already talked about them, and they're in my other guard regiments. Unfortunately, the traitor guards are everywhere in the lore, but they just don't get a lot of the spotlight. Usually a few mentions, a few chapters in the books, and maybe a little glimmer in an animation is all you get. Lore-wise, they just don't get their time of the day. That is mostly given to Chaos Marines. Chaos Space Marines absolutely go hard. Anyway, thanks for watching.